Hi George, how are you?
Marhaba, Kifik Elena, how are you? I'm very well, thank you.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to interview you today. Our main focus is we would like to know a little bit of your story as an immigrant yourself. Thank you again for accepting this invitation.
It's my pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. So please tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you originally from? You kind of introduced with the language. How did you come to Canada?
Well, my name is George Nammour. Even though I was born in Egypt, but I left Egypt when I was 3 years old. I grew up in Lebanon. I had the chance to live a couple of years in Ivory Coast, Abidjan, because my father had a job there. So I moved around a lot. That's pretty much who I am as a person.
Absolutely. When did you immigrate to Canada?
I landed in Canada in August 1976. The civil war in Lebanon started in 75. I was a teenager. And my parents actually decided for me that it was better to leave the country. And that's how I came to Canada in 1976.
Wow, awesome. You have a lot of history in Canada. Being in Canada, becoming a permanent resident, and becoming a citizen. What are some of the challenges?
First, I arrived with a student visa in 1976. So when I landed in Canada, it was in Quebec City. My parents chose for me the province of Quebec because in Lebanon, we're more francophone. I finished college and then went to university. First challenge for a Lebanese kid that comes from a warm country was the weather, of course. Winter is harsh when you have to wake up in the morning, take the bus, 20 below zero, 25 below zero, you know what it is. Another challenge that I had was the financial challenge, of course. As an immigrant, I came with not much in my pockets. So I needed to work to support myself. Back then, a student could not work. It's not like today. It was the same status as a visitor, a visa. So I could stay, I could study, but I could not work. So I was fortunate because Lebanon being at war, they allowed the Lebanese people in Canada to apply for permanent residency. This is what I did. So my biggest challenge was the first 5-6 months before I get my PR. I was living on $100 a week that my parents were able to send me.
Impressive. What did you do then? How did you get here?
Okay, well, how I got here, I'm the youngest of three. And my brother chose in the late 60s to immigrate to Canada. So my parents had in mind that I would someday follow him. And when the war happened, that's what they did. To make a long story short, I had the help of a neighbor that was living in the same building and working in the Italian embassy, and I could escape in the consulate Italian car that took me to the airport, and then I could fly out of the country.
Wow, you can definitely write a book. It's just your transition from Lebanon to Canada. Wow, you said you first arrived to Quebec.
Yes.
How did you arrive to Moncton?
Oh, well, that's many years after. So in order to tell you how I arrived to Moncton, I have to tell you what I did in the last 44 years. Because
Absolutely.
I arrived in Moncton about 8 years ago. So I finished my studies in Quebec. And during that period, I was a part-time employee at McDonald's. So this is how I became interested in McDonald's. I started as an employee, and then I went up the ladder, and then I became an assistant manager. When I finished my studies, they offered me a job as a permanent assistant manager, full-time, which I accepted, and so on and so on. Then in 2010, I had the opportunity to purchase my first McDonald's restaurant and become an owner. At the end of 2012, I was offered the opportunity to purchase a market here in Moncton of, at that time, 4 restaurants. So I sold the one I had in Montreal, and I moved to Moncton with my family. I'm working with my son and my wife and my daughter-in-law, and it's a family business. So this is how we came to Moncton.
Oh, interesting. Being in Moncton for 8 years, what do you think of Moncton community here?
The interesting part of Moncton is that the community is open to immigration. Now, of course, you always have some people that are a little slower to adapt to immigration, but overall, people are willing to help. It's a small community, but very open to immigration.
What did motivate you to start the business, to be on your own, to move away from Quebec, from Montreal, more opportunities, coming to Moncton, not knowing anything, so...
I think that most of the immigrants, when they do the big move to leave a country and come to another country, it's to do better. So the motivation is there because everything is new. When you come from another country and you have nothing to lose, what more can you lose? So you try and you work hard, and this is what motivates most of them.
Why McDonald's?
I could make up a lot of stories. But why McDonald's? It's just a coincidence. I happened to be hired by McDonald's, and once I was in, I loved it. So I didn't choose McDonald's. I could say that McDonald's chose me, and then I chose McDonald's.
Yeah. Based on the community response that you have gave me, what do you wish the general community to know more about immigrants?
Well, what I can tell the community is, first of all, don't be afraid of immigrants. Immigrants are friendly. Immigrants came to help. Immigrants didn't come to steal jobs or anything like that. They're willing to work hard, and it's a big plus for a community. And my wildest dream would be that every born Canadian would become like a hub family, bubble family to a new immigrant family.
Actually, a great idea.
Well, I'm not the first one, and it's not the first
Yes.
time that a community cannot do much as a community, but if individually, if each one touches one person, and so on, this is how we make it.
I absolutely agree with you, and I like that idea. As a business owner, how is it working from home? How is it putting everything in standby? How is coming back from all that? How did you ever stop during a pandemic and the lockdown? If you can touch a little bit about it.
Yes. Well, first of all, we were lucky because working in the food industry, we could remain open, which we did. As you probably have seen when you walk through, we have a lot of measures in place in order to be safe for our employees, for the public in general, and this is something that is very important. Now, of course, it's a new challenge, it's a new reality. So everything we're putting in place and everything that we've been doing is going to stay mostly. Even if they would find a vaccine tomorrow, I think that we've learned from that pandemic, and there are some things that we do and some sanitization. Not that we didn't do anything, we were really focused on that already, but we went over and beyond what we were doing, and this is here to stay.
Yes, absolutely. Accepting it's a big thing, right? So what does, during this pandemic and reopening again, what does your typical day looks like?
Well, usually I start by going through all the emails, all the data, we have a lot of things to look at, the sales and everything. Then most of the time I will just go around all the stores, see the people, how they're doing, and then come back home and keep working.
Face it. Back to the community. Like, I personally have, I will say, about 3 mentors in my life. That inspires me, motivates me to keep going, to just consult sometimes. Who does inspire you?
We all have mentors, but my first mentor is my mother. My mother has been an inspiration to me because, living in the Middle East, being a woman is not necessarily easy. You don't usually have a role that is a leading role. Mm-hmm. But my mother was a leader in her way. And we're talking of a woman that raised her family in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So, it was not the same thing as today. And she showed me most of what I'm doing today. I would say that professionally I had a guy, and his name is Jacques Giguère. He was my boss before I became an operator. I worked for him for almost 25 years. I was a store manager for him. I was his supervisor, director. And this guy was a real inspiration to me business-wise. I mean, he's a real businessman that showed me a lot. And it's just the way that we were working together that is extraordinary, in the sense that he would let me do anything. He said, you're the guy in charge, so you make the decisions, and I will not interfere into it. And that's the best way to do it, because when you have two leaders trying to run a business, it doesn't work.
Absolutely. It doesn't work. What is your advice to new immigrants in Canada?
Okay, well, my first advice to new immigrants would be open yourself to the new country. Most of the immigrants, when we arrive to Canada, and I include myself, we're not necessarily showing the best of us, because we are in a period where we're struggling a lot. So we're sad, we're angry, and people might perceive us as different than what we really are. So what I would advise the people, stay open, reach out for the Canadians, show them how good you are, and they will accept you. And also, don't stay alone in your corner, and don't stay only within your community, because you're not going to grow if you do that. Reach out for example, for MAGMA. We didn't touch about MAGMA, but I'm very involved in MAGMA, and this is important. MAGMA being the Mountain Association, the Multicultural Association of Mountain. Reach out for a culture hub. I mean, do something to have contacts with people. Don't isolate yourself.
That's a very good advice. Thank you. And I agree with you because we don't know how many immigrants unless we have the statistics, but we don't know how many immigrants we have and of what kind and from where. So because a lot of them, they don't know where to reach out or what to do. So thank you for sharing some of the organizations, and there is much more out there in our community that we could definitely make a huge difference and integration easier. Okay, George, well, thank you so much for the interview. It was a pleasure to kind of find out about your background, and I'm really pleased to be here.
Thank you very much, Elena. It was my pleasure.